Is up? What is up? Happy New Year. Not going to take too long today. Um, comment type a 1 in the chat if you're active. Just want to see who's active, who's on here. And make sure if you're not able to chat, you have to subscribe. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and then you'll be able to chat in, answer some questions that you may have, so forth and so on. But we're going to get started in a little bit, give some people some time to jump on. It's my first time doing a YouTube live, so bear with me as I try to figure this thing out. Um, Looks like we have 4 people on here. Make sure you guys hit the like button as well on the channel. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'm gonna start doing these a little bit more often, whether it be Q&As or I'm definitely gonna do all of my deal breakdowns on here. So, with the deal breakdowns, you guys will have get some insight on how I found a deal, how I closed the deal, all the things that happened throughout the deal, so forth and so on. So, I think that'd be very valuable, and it's easier to do it this way instead of me having to edit videos. So, and in that way, everybody can take a look at it and learn something from it. Um, but we'll get started in like 5 minutes. Shoot, less than 5 minutes. We're gonna get this thing going now. Anybody got time to wait? Do. So I'm gonna jump on here. I'm gonna get started on this. So this was this deal right here. Uh, can you hear me okay? If you can hear me okay, put a 1 in the chat so I know you can hear me. I'm not just talking. I don't know if this is going or not. Is the audio work? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna talk about this deal real quick. I'm not gonna keep you guys too long. If you have to leave, before it's completed, the video will be up on YouTube. But anyway, this deal was a probate. I mean, not probate. It was a novation deal. This was my third novation deal that I closed this year. And I will say, novations are definitely another way for you to get opportunities to close deals because certain deals, a seller it wouldn't work for a wholesale because the seller might want a little bit more money. A seller might want 20 or $30,000 more than your cash offer, but but you won't be able to move it as a wholesale deal because that's a little bit more expensive. That cuts into your profit, that cuts into the buyers, so the buyer's not going to want to pay 20, $30,000 more or $40,000 more because you got to tie in your profit there. So what you can do is you can offer a little bit more with the novation if the property fits the criteria of such, and you can put that property on the market and list it and still make a little bit more money or make any money on the deal. So that's what I have found with the novations as I've been doing them. Like I said, this is my third one that I've done, so I have a little bit of experience with it. All experiences they are three separate scenarios, but they all ended up working out the right way, and I ended up closing them. So this one in particular, just break down the deal as far as how I found it, how I got the lead, all these different things. I got my notes here too, just in case I don't forget anything. So I pulled the list that I pulled for this particular lead was a absentee owners list. Okay, so absentee owners, you guys you should know is a property that the owner doesn't primarily occupy. So this particular lead, this seller, he's a landlord, so he owns multiple properties. This was a property that he wanted to get rid of. Um, he's starting to kind of liquidate his portfolio and get rid of some of his rental properties. So this was one of them that he wanted to get rid of. So basically, what I did was I reached out to him. Um, I sent them, the marketing strategy I use PropStream to pull a list. So I put in all the filters, all the criteria from PropStream. Then I exported the list, skip traced it through batchskiptracing.com, and then I sent him a SMS blast. And he responded. And basically, his initial response, and I got it pulled up here. I think I could share a screen with you guys so we can kind of review the text message. But initially, he didn't want anything to do. He didn't want anything to do with me, right? He was like, "Oh, your number. I mean, your price is going to be low, so forth and so on." And sometimes you just got to stick with it. So I'm gonna go through the whole text message thread that I had with him through the text message blast. So let me go ahead. I think I can share screen here. I'm gonna share my screen. Select the this one right here. So I'm gonna share this with you guys. So here it is right here. This is the text thread that I had with him. So as you guys can see, I sent this out to him July 23rd this year. And I'm gonna give you some tips and some gems that you can take away from this. When it comes to the text messaging and all these different things that you may or may not know about that I utilize, like some of my strategies. So July 23rd, sent this message. Now, when you're sending messages, you want to make sure that if you're doing text messages, depending on the platform, you have to ensure that you let them know your name and what company that you're from, and also like you have to have like an unsubscribe or opt out language in the text message. So that's why Kayla, Georgia home buyers, and opt out, right? So I hit those three criteria to allow your text messages to go through to those sellers, right? So the carriers does not block them. And as you can see here, I utilize a different name. I don't say this is Ty, right? I utilize Kayla as being my assistant, right? Especially when it comes to text messaging. The reason why I do that is because maybe Kayla might get a better response than Ty would, right? So I'll change the names occasionally. I have Kayla, I have Sarah, I have Nikki. I have different people like that. I'm gonna add a Rachel, all these different things. Claire, I'm gonna add those different names as well, and those are going to be my assistants, right? When it comes to text messaging. So I sent an initial text message out. Then, I didn't get any response. So 3 hours later, I sent another one, just following up. Hey, did you see my text from earlier? Right. A lot of times when I send that response out, a lot of people will say, no, I didn't see it. And I do that to generate a response. Or they will say, yes, I did see it, not interested, or whatever. Or they may say something along the lines of, "Yeah, oh, I saw it. I was a little tied up, blah, 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 blah," right? So the strategy there is just to get them to generate a response, right? So after I sent that, he responded and he let me know what was going on. The house is rented right now. You people never make a fair offer, and if you do, you vanish like the wind when it's time to act. Why would I think you are any different? So this guy is already on his heels about this whole situation. Like he's already got a bad taste in his mouth. Obviously, somebody didn't pull through, when when they made an offer, so he got a bad taste. So let's continue on. Let me scroll down a little bit and show you my response. So my response was pretty simple. Hey, I can't speak for them, but if the number makes sense for both parties, we move forward and get things done. What would you ideally like to get for the house, right? So I'm always trying to get a number out of the seller first. Always, always, always. You always want to get a number out the seller first. That way you don't kind of shoot yourself or highball yourself, right? If you give a seller a number, let's say you throw out a number initially, 150,000, but the seller was wanting 120, but you wouldn't have known that because, you threw out your number first. You just kind of highballed yourself. But there are situations and scenarios in which, you won't be able to get a number from the seller because they're going to be one of those sellers that's, you know, hard pressed on not giving you a number. So ideally you want to give them a number first, get a number out of the seller first. So he goes to say Zillow market value is 262,000. We would entertain a fair offer based on that price. Okay, cool. I got his number. which is probably going to be a high number anyways. So whenever the seller gives me a number, I'm always going to assume that it's higher than what they really want. And then based off of his response, he's talking about Zillow market value. So he's not going to get Zillow market value. So then, I reached back out to him. I said, "Hey, I was able to get a preliminary offer approved. Reason why I like to use preliminary offer is because that gives them the idea or the notion that that number is preliminary, meaning that it won't stick. It probably won't stick, right? So that's going to be based off of certain scenarios. That's going to be based off of the inspection, based off of us looking at the house, basing off of X, Y, Z. So I always say I was able to get a preliminary offer approved, right? Um, just so you're not committed to that number. And then always, put out the benefits, right? You don't pay any closing costs, fees, realtor commissions, and can close once title is clear. And then, I always double back with a double text message back to back. Would you be interested in moving forward with it? Let me know your thoughts. So here we go. He goes and says, okay, that's a fair price. What about our renter? His lease agreement is not up until December. Okay, so now he has a tenant in the property. So that's another, curveball in the equation. So what do? We have to figure something out, right? And the best way to kind of, my options when it comes to tenants is okay, seeing if the tenant is already going to leave out, right? But he says his lease agreement isn't up until December. Okay, well, this was in July. I want to get this thing closed sooner rather than later. So what is the option to get this closed sooner rather than later? We can offer cash for keys, right? That's basically you're paying the tenant a certain amount of money so the tenant can vacate the property. That money we like to label it as moving expenses, et cetera, for the tenant to move to another place, right? Quicker. So that's what I said. I said typically we like to purchase vacant homes at closing. In that case, what we can do at no expense to you is offer the renter some funds for moving expenses to vacate sooner rather than later. That's an agreement held between us and the tenant. That's cash for keys. Then I go and say, if you're okay with that, we can proceed forward. Is he aware that you're selling? Was that conversation had? So you always want to make sure that the seller is having a conversation with the tenant. That way you don't run into any roadblocks or situations later on down the line. So if they are all on the same page and they understand, the tenant understand that the seller is trying to sell the property, then you shouldn't go through any situations when it comes to getting them to vacate the property, right? But every situation is different. Some tenants believe that they own the house and they won't move, et cetera. They might stand pack and stay firm. All these different things happens, right? So you would just want to make sure that the seller had a conversation with the tenant, let them know that, hey, we had a conversation. He knows what's going on. So um, I'm gonna proceed on. We have not had recent conversation with him, but he is aware we intend to sell at some point. Let us reach out to him and see where he's at with life. Um, he intended to only rent a year after his divorce. I've said, okay, cool. So we kind of let them work that thing out. Um, that being said, if he is good with moving early, we want to move forward with your offer. So it goes from, hey, you guys don't ever give me a good offer. And then when you do give me an offer, you go missing to, hey, we would like to move forward with the offer, right? And also him saying, hey, we would entertain anything around 260, right? I offered him 225. So that goes to show you that initial offer that they give you, there's always wriggle room more often than not to bring them down a little bit. Just like we set an anchor on the low end, they set anchors on the high end, right? So that brings, so you can negotiate in between that. The earliest we can close is first week of October. Our business has us out of town for extended periods of time. So at this point, I'm looking at this property as a novation, anyways, right? Because of the price point. So, and then the type of property is right. So, what would qualify a property, in my opinion, to me, for that works for me, would be the type of property that it is, right? Is it just outdated? Is it move-in ready? Like, can I put this on the market? Can someone move in? Without an issue. Don't have to do too much repairs or anything like that. It's not like a rehab project or a property that the floors are missing and all of these different things. It can get approved by lending and financing, right? Because obviously, when you're putting a property on the market and you're listing it to get the highest price for a novation deal, you're looking for somebody that's going to want to, a retail buyer that's going to get a loan, get approved, get a mortgage, and put on that property so they can live in it, right? So you want to make sure those things are intact for me, when it comes to innovation, right? But there are other instances in which you can list, other properties, and I'll get into that in another video down the line. But for this property in particular, it was the property, when you look, I think the internet went out real quick. Anyway, my intent wasn't to, do a wholesale deal on this property because I already know that it was going to be way too low. My wholesale offer would have probably been in the 150,000 area range, right? And that would have crossed me out the deal. So I'm looking at the property, like I said, based off of the structure of the property. It's a 3 bed, 2 bath, decent area neighborhood, defense, 2-car garage. And then after looking at the condition, I haven't seen the condition yet, but based off of the just those things, I can identify that this will be a decent novation property, right? So now I have to go and look into the house, get it looked at, see what the condition is, and then I'll make a full decision on that, right? So let me continue on down here. But once he said he'll move forward with the offer, my next response is we're flexible in terms of closing. What's a good email for you, right? So at that point, give me your email. I'm gonna send you the contract and we're gonna get this thing going, right? So that's what happened. Got his email, sent him the contract. He literally signed it the next day. Now, once he signed the contract, that's when I coordinated my boots on the ground to go out to the property to take pictures, take videos so I can confirm and see what the condition of the inside was, right? So with that, this property, mind you, is 2 hours away from where I live. So boots on the ground, I found someone on Facebook groups, right? I put in a post. I said, let me stop sharing this right here. I put in a post saying, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to take pictures of properties. I'll pay you $50. It's just for real estate. Take pictures of inside, outside." So somebody came, they commented, reached out to her, and we kind of connected that way and sent her in there to take pictures of the property. She did photos, videos, and she's been doing it for me for 3 years in that market. Right, every time I need pictures in that area, I pay her $50. She goes out there, takes the pictures, take the videos, sends it to me in a Google Drive so I can look at it. So that's what I did. I got the photos back, right? And looked at the photos. I'm like, okay, it's in fair condition, doesn't really need too much work. And I'm gonna show you guys let me show you guys the actual property from the pictures that she sent me. Uh what is it? 106. So you guys can see kind of like the condition, right? Get an idea of like, okay, what am I looking at when it comes to condition of the property and so forth and so on. Let me go to tab, will be this tab right here. And if you guys have any questions, just feel free to comment them in the chat, and I'll address them as we go along. I wanted to be kind of interactive both ways. I don't want to sit here and speak the whole time. If you need any clarifications on anything, just make sure you comment in the chat, and I get you. And if you're not able to comment in the chat, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you'll be able to comment in the chat. So here are some of the pictures, right? I just want to give you guys an idea of what the property looked like and what I'm looking at. So I'm looking at the kitchen, I'm looking at the bathrooms, right? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Zoom in. But yeah, I'm looking at the kitchen, I'm looking at the bathrooms. Um, we can actually just go through them. This was the tenant. He's sitting in the house with feet curled, toes curled, and everything else while she's getting the pictures. But as you can see, the bathroom looks decent, right? Doesn't need much work in the bathroom. This can go, you can list this on the market. It's just outdated, right? Still fair condition. Floors look decent. AC obviously need to get, swapped out probably, but this house looks like it's in decent condition. That needs to be redone, but somebody who wants to live in it, hey, I can do that. This will get approved by a lender. You know what I mean? The main things that'll stop the house from getting approved is, you need a replacement roof and you need all these different things, all the major things, right? The structure isn't correct. Um, this is the actual property right here, as you can see. Like I said, nice little house that somebody will be willing to live in. You can list this on the market, no problem, and see what happens, right? Um, that's all of that, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking for when it comes to getting these properties, right? And doing a novation. It has to be in fair condition. Um, so once I got the photos back, I'm like, okay, this will be a really good opportunity for a novation deal. So I said, okay, cool. Let me go ahead and move forward with moving it as a novation deal. deal, right? So obviously, when you do a novation deal, you want to make sure you send the right paperwork, right contract, you have the right clause in your paperwork. And I all my contracts are going to be basically a novation contract that gives me the ability to list the property when they sign it, or I can wholesale it with my contract. So with this, now I'm doing a novation. Okay, that's the plan. Now, next thing I need to do is, like I said, this is a different market, 2 hours away. So with me, when I do novations, I hire a real estate agent so they can list it, they can take professional photos, they can, handle the inbound calls from the other buyers agents and all of these different things, so I can continue on doing what I need to do on getting more deals. And the real estate agent just reports to me back with what offers came in, how many showings we got scheduled, feedback from the buyers, and so forth and so on, right? So they get paid. I pay them and hire them to handle that part of the business, right? So I had to find a new real estate agent that handled this area because I wanted to get some insight. I wanted to get some an idea of if the house will sell for what I thought it would sell for, and if it would make sense to make money on this as an ovation. So when I looked at it, I'm looking at it at ARV as 250, right? And I have a little calculator that I use, and I'll show you that. I have a calculator that I use to kind of determine if this would be a decent novation deal for me, right? Or, an on market deal. So I'm thinking the ARV is 250. I offered the seller 225, right? So that's like a $25,000 difference, right? So I'm thinking, I make a little bit of money, around 10K or something like that, right? My calculator so I can show you kind of what I was looking at. So this is like my on market calculator that I use. I have I input the sales price. The commission already get calculated. Closing costs gets calculated as well. So what I put in, I had the ARV at 250, I believe, and the seller, I agreed that he gets 225, right? So that left me with like a $6,000 profit, right? That's my profit. That's what I get. Now, mind you, typically you will want more profit than that. You will want at least three times that amount. You know what I mean? Four times that amount. You will want on a novation deal, you want to make, 20, $30,000 if you could. But at this moment, I saw an opportunity to make money. I said, screw it. Let me go ahead and take advantage of it and see what I can do. Right. So next thing so I got the agent, having a conversation with the agent, communicated with the agent. I'm gonna keep this up because I'm gonna get back to this later on. Found an agent on Facebook, had a conversation. And this is important too because you want to make sure you qualify and vet your agents, right? The people that you're using, the people that you're working with, new people that don't understand, that, never worked with you before, or maybe never worked with wholesalers before. So what I did was I had questions. I asked her questions, and I'm gonna pull it up on Facebook too, so you guys can see kind of how what questions that I asked, kind of what we went through. I think did I save it? Let me see, because these questions are important when it comes to finding the right agent to work with. You know what I mean? So let me get this pulled up real quick. Um, Mo, what's up, Mo? I love it, Ty. I love the realness and no fluff of your content. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I try to keep it real for everybody. Make sure you hit that like button too. If you haven't, if you want to comment questions in the chat and you're not able to, you have to subscribe to the channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. And stop me with questions. I love to answer questions to see if I can clarify anything for anybody. So don't be afraid to ask any questions. This is a good opportunity for that. So let me find this agent that the conversation that we had. I got so many windows up. I gotta close all this. So basically, how I found her, same thing, Facebook groups, right? So I jumped on Facebook. I typed in the city that this deal was in, and I asked, I made a post in the Facebook group. I said, hey, um, I'm looking to get insight on, the Warner Robins market and any agents that, work in this area, blah, 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 blah. And she reached out. And pretty much the conversation was, I can't even get it pulled up right now for whatever reason. I was loading. But pretty much the conversation was, hey, have you worked with investors before? Do you understand what a novation is? Um, this is what I do. This is how we do. This is how we do it. Are you familiar? Do you know any attorneys in the area that are familiar? X, Y, Z. And that was the conversation, right? And she was like, "Well, I don't know what a novation is, but I looked it up just now, and I understand it. I do know a few attorneys that might be willing to do it." And that was that, right? So I was like, "Okay, you down with it? I'm down with it." I just broke it down to her. I just said, "Hey, this is how it works. It's basically nothing changes on your end. You're still going to do what you do as a real estate agent. You're going to get a purchase and sale contract. We're gonna list it, and then you're just gonna field the offers. Nothing changes on your end. The only thing that changes is the paperwork on the attorney's end. The attorneys handle the paperwork side of it, and that's all it's about. So we went ahead and listed it, and we put it up for 250. Put it up there. We had it up there for a while, honestly, longer than it should have been. But at this time the election is going on. All these different factors are coming into play. So we had a showing. We had some showings. Had an offer that came in, but the offer was a little bit too low in order for me to make money. So I passed up on the offer. I think the offer was at 230,000 or something like that. And this is where I screwed up because I should have went back to the seller and said, "Hey, seller, this is, offer that we have on the table. We'll have to renegotiate, from that 225 that we agreed upon to be a little bit lower to make this work. Are you okay with that?" But I didn't do it. I was so dead set on trying to get the seller to 225, and I was confident that I can get him to 225 because of the property, because of the area, because of the market, so forth and so on. So I end up missing out on that opportunity with that buyer. I could have closed a long time ago, but I didn't tell him of it, didn't inform him about that, and that's one mistake that I made. So whenever you guys are getting offers, and if you have to lower your price to make money on it or to make it work, at least go to the seller and see if they will be willing to do that, right? No matter what. So didn't do that. Offer came, and we end up, passing on that offer. So more time goes by, more time goes by. So he emails me, and he says, "Hey, the closing date was set for this. What's going on?" He's getting a little frustrated. He had another company reach out to him and say they can give him a different offer and all this, a cash offer that's going to be lower. So I said, "You know what?" I said, "Just give me one more chance, right? Give me until the weekend. If you're going to take 180,000 or whatever cash for the property, because that's what the other company offered him." I said, "If you're going to take 185,000 cash for the property, I can pay you a little bit more than that. But just give me, the opportunity for the weekend to reach out to the people that already submitted offers, already reviewed it, but they were reviewed the house and reviewed the property, but they were at a higher price, and I can guarantee that we get it done." And he was like, "Okay, Ty, I'll give you till Monday, blah 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 blah. Let me know what you can find. Keep me posted." So basically, he was a little frustrated because it was taking too long. Supposed to close on it in like October, but didn't close on it. And I was transparent with him. I said, "Hey, listen, there was an offer that came across the table, and it was my mistake. I didn't approach you to let you know that it was, a little bit lower than what we needed. I should have approached you. Now that I know that you're willing to take a little bit lower price for the property, we can get this thing sold immediately," right? So at that moment, um, we dropped the price down to through 230. We listed it, so we were at 250. Then we dropped it down to 230 on the list price, and immediately once he said, he's gonna give me another shot, we went ahead and got another buyer that submitted an offer that worked. They submitted an offer, and the offer that we agreed to was we negotiated. So they wanted it at 228 and $5,000 closing costs, right? So I told the seller we can do it at 195 now. So I went from 225 with the seller down to 195 with the seller. Okay. So now I'm gonna show you guys this in the offer calculator to see how this works out. Let me share my screen again. I'm gonna do a lot of screen sharing because I like to show and tell. So now we went from 250 as a list price, right, down to 230 as a list price, and we went from 225 as a sale price to the seller to 195 to the seller, right? So right now, this is kind of my profit before we got another buyer, right? After I renegotiated with the seller to get them to say, "Hey, we'll pay 195 instead of 225," and he was okay with that. Now our plan is, okay, we drop this sales price down to 230, and now my profit is looking at 17,000, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. So now when we get that buyer and renegotiating with the buyer says, I want to purchase the property at 228, right? And then we want $5,000 closing costs, right? So that's the contribution. So whenever there's closing costs or seller contributions or whatever the case may be, I always add that in. So even with the $2,000 price drop and the $5,000 seller contribution, I'm still at about $11,000 profit. So I said, okay, cool. At this moment, all right, I'm not being greedy. That's a good deal. Let's get this thing done and get it closed. And so we can get this thing closed out. So now the closing date, this is in the beginning, end of November, beginning of December around the time, right? So the closing date is, December 27th initially. So I said, if they can close on the 27th and we can make money on this, let's go ahead and do it, whatever, right? So that's where we're standing at right now as far as the close and the purchase price. So now we're under contract with the buyer for this price. I'm looking at about a $11,000 profit. Um, Now we're going through the process with the closing attorney, right? We're doing a novation process. We're sending all the paperwork to the closing attorney. And this is another mistake that I made. And if you guys are following on my Instagram page, and I posted about this, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this is the mistake that I made. I utilized the buyer's closing attorney, and I should have utilized my own closing attorney. But the only issue that I had was I was going to use my real estate agent's closing attorney that she knew was down there because, like I said, this property is 2 hours away, right? The seller lives down there, the buyer lives down there. My closing attorney that done my novations with is 2 hours away from them. So I was trying to find a closing attorney that does the novations down there, but they're older, like they more traditional. They don't deal with a lot of investors. It's traditional real estate. It's listed, boom. There's no novations and all of that down there. They're like 10 years behind. So she had a recommendation of an attorney that does it down there, but apparently he didn't want to take any more transactions. So we went with the buyer's attorney. So I called the buyer's attorney, talked to them about, hey, do they understand what an ovation is and all of that? And they said they did. And, we went through the process. Now, this kind of goes to mistake number two that I made, right? So when you're doing an ovation, you have to get an attorney in fact or a power of attorney that's allowing you to sign the listing agreements, that's allowing you to sign the amendments, that's allowing you to sign the contracts and any paperwork on behalf of the seller, right? You have to get that in place. So I had that in place, right? So being that I had that in place and it was granting me the right to sign on behalf of them, I was signing my name instead of having the seller sign their name. So what brought a red flag to the closing attorney was my name on the documents, but my name is not on the title or the deed being the owner. So they were like, "Hey, what's going on? This is not lining up. Who are you? What's going on?" Right? So that caused a whole mess with that closing attorney because they could have easily rectified it and said, "Hey, all you have to do is just get the seller to sign this paperwork, and then we're good to go. Don't worry about it. Just we'll scratch that. Boom." But they're not familiar with the process, right? So that whole ordeal kind of went to shit because that closing attorney didn't understand what a novation was. They didn't understand the paperwork. They didn't understand the process. They didn't understand none of that. So it all went to shit. And ultimately, I don't want to go down the whole thing on what happened, because it's all I documented on on Instagram. But basically, we we parted ways, right? The closing attorney said the only way that we can get this deal done is if you vanish, you disappear, you don't exist, and all these different things. She said that in email. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense. So I'm trying to sit here, I'm trying to pivot and shout out to my girl Mo because she gave me a suggestion on how we can game plan and try to make this work where I can get my profit. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do to ensure that I'm protected, that I get my profit, that I get my fee, that I get what I deserve, that I get what I earn for this deal? And they were just saying basically you need to vanish, you need to disappear. So I'm sitting here, okay, do I file a memorandum? Do I do this? Do I do just a JV contract with the seller? They were basically saying we won't be able to disperse you any money at all. So the risk is that once we disperse the money, then the seller is going to have to send you your fee, right? And another risk is, and they said, well, you can't contact us for anything. So basically, I won't know when the closing would be. I can't get no updates, none of that, right? Unless it's from the seller or unless it's from my real estate agent. So all of that went to mess. I said, you know what? Screw y'all, right? Basically, fuck y'all. Let me go find somebody. Let me go get my original closing attorney. So what I did was I reached out to the buyer. My agent reached out to the buyer and I said, listen, will they be willing to work with my closing attorney? Same buyer, will they be willing to work with my closing attorney? And they were like, nah, right? So they bailed out. They backed out the deal, what have you. And then at that point, we had to go find another buyer, right? So once we found another buyer, and mind you, after all this happened, I called the seller. I told the seller exactly what happened, and I was transparent and I let them know exactly what happened from the jump. I let them know exactly what happened with the closing attorney, that they didn't understand the process, that they didn't know what they were doing, blah, 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 blah. And he understood. He was like, and I told him what the game plan was. So one thing to take away from all this is whenever you're calling the seller with a problem, always have the solution ready with it. Don't just call them with a problem and no solution, right? So I called him with the problem, let him know what happened, but then I also let him know what the game plan was once we get past that, right? If he allowed us to. I said, listen, this is what happened. The attorney don't know what the hell they're doing. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put this back on the market. We have another buyer that's interested. We're gonna get the buyer in on the deal, no problem. It's gonna be quick, don't worry about it. And we're gonna use my closing attorney. We're gonna get this thing done how it should have been done in the beginning. And he was like, okay, cool. Sounds good. Let's just go ahead and get it done. Hope somebody's interested in buying the property. I said, there's no problem. Somebody's going to want it. Trust me. So literally a day later, after we put it back on market, relisted it, we had another buyer come in, and that's when they agreed to that deal, right? For me to get $10,000, $11,000 roughly. So boom. So that's that. Now we're on our way, right? We're going through the title process, going through the closing process, going through all of that. And basically we get to another situation, right? Here's the situation. We have to do a mail away closing, right? So the mail away closing. Before I get to the mail away closing, I forgot to mention I paid the tenant uh $500 to vacate the property, right? So once he vacated the property, because he vacated in October, so the property been vacant for 2 months. Once he vacated the property, I paid him $500, so boom, so he's taken care of. So that came out of my pocket too. But anyway, so now we had to do a mail away closing, and basically a mail away closing is when you know the buyer seller signs documents, they get them notarized and then sent back to the closing attorney, and they don't have to come into the closing attorney the signed documents physically, right? But not in this scenario. This scenario, I had to. The seller was in Florida for the holiday, right? And the buyer was in Warner Robins. That's the city. And basically, what happened was I had to coordinate the mail away closing for the seller, and then I had to coordinate for the buyer to figure out how they were going to do that, right? So I reached out to my closing attorney. I let him know, so it's going to be a mail away closing. Seller's in Florida, the buyer is in Warner Robins. All right, can we do a mail away closing? You guys mail out the documents, mobile notary, have them send it back to you, and then we close it. Boom. So they can do that with the seller, right? That wasn't an issue with the seller. Seller was going to be in Florida, so what they did was they mailed the seller the closing documents. The seller signed the closing documents, got them notarized, and mailed them back. Right? That wasn't the issue, but they wasn't going to be able to do that with the buyer. And I'm like, why not? And the reason why they told me is because being that the buyer is using a lender and getting a loan, that they need to sign those documents in person at the closing attorney or get power of attorney to sign those documents if they're not going to be able to do it, right? So I said, okay, now we got another issue. What do we need to do? So I'm sitting there thinking, I said, okay, well, can the seller come up to, the closing office, 2 hour drive? That's a lot. And the seller was disabled too. So that's another issue, right? He was disabled. So he had to get somebody to drive him 2 hours. So I said, you know what? How about we do this? we'll pay for the transportation for the seller, not the seller, the buyer to come up from Warner Robins to drive 2 hours to the closing attorney to sign the documents. We agreed to that. He drove up, signed the documents, and that was pretty much it. It wasn't no issue, and we got it done. Besides the closing being delayed a day because of the holiday, everything else went smooth after we got that second buyer in there. But ultimately, that's how the Novation deal closed. There's a lot of things going on with that. It started off with me doing a Novation in a new market. Had to find a new real estate agent out there in that market that understood the market, that understood how to work with me, that understood novations, that understood the process. Had to find, uh, went through, had to pay the tenant cash for keys, had to get the tenant vacated out the property, so they can close on it, so we can close on it quickly, so we can do our showings without the tenant being there. Because trying to do a novation with a tenant in the property is a little difficult because now you have to schedule the showings around the tenant to get people in the house. The tenant was in the house sometimes, and that kind of put a bad taste in the buyer's mouths when they come to look at the house. So you know, um, you want to be able to do the novations when the property is vacant if you could, or if it's not vacant, you want to make sure you coordinate. Because I've done novations where it was vacant, I've done novations where it was owner occupant. So you want to be able to coordinate where, if it's not vacant, where the seller, the owner, or the tenant is out of the property for a certain period of time, where you can get as many buyers in there to see the house as much as possible, like a time window from like two, let's say like 12 to 5 or something like that, or 12 to 3, and have buyers in there through that window. Um, but went through the novation, went through the tenant with the cash for keys, had to do that. um, Also, went through the bad closing attorney, not knowing what the fucking novation is, delaying the closing and all that. Went through that. Went through the seller kind of giving up, losing faith, losing trust, and me getting the deal done and getting ready to take another offer from another company. And I found a way to maneuver through that and allow him to work with me again to give me one more shot to get this thing going. And then lastly, trying to coordinate this closing between the seller that's in Florida and then the damn buyer that's in Warner Robins, and they're 2 hours away from the closing attorney and all this and that. But ultimately, and then also dealing with the market during the election and all these different things. So it was a lot. Like, this process was a lot. But I learned a lot during this. Learned not to sign my name on the documents anymore. So as long as you're being transparent with the seller and you understand and they understand, what's going on, that you're listing the property, that you're doing this and XYZ, then it's going to be a whole lot smoother. I promise you. I kid you not. So if you're out there trying to do these novations and you're trying to say that you're going to buy the property and all this and that, you're actually not trying to buy the property, then you're going to get yourself into some situations where you probably won't be able to get yourself out of, because now you're coming off like you're not being forthright about what you're doing. So um, at the end of the day, from the beginning, if you're going to do a novation, make sure you let them know exactly what you're doing. Hey, we're going to list the property. We're going to get it in front of a wider network of people. We're going to cover all your closing costs, real estate commissions, fees, all of that. But we're going to ensure that you get this amount that we agreed to. This is ultimately what you care about, and we're going to make sure you get this. So if you get this, anything else above that, we'll take care of it. We'll cover it. Don't worry about it. And a lot of times they understand that, because a lot of these people, they know that we're in business to make money, right? At the end of the day, if nobody's making money, then what are we doing it for, right? So they understand that. And if you work with somebody and you're straight up with them, then they'll be able to, make this process a whole lot easier, because the seller, he was a whole lot easier to work with than someone who I would have, if I would have lied and said I'm buying it myself. Now I got to find a way to cover up my lie that I'm buying it, and now this and that. So um and that's how this deal pretty much worked out. And then I end up making, $14,000 on this deal, which is really good. Um, and I could have possibly missed out on the opportunity, right? So I took advantage of the opportunity, and that's why novations are important. That's why utilizing multiple exit strategies are important, because wholesaling, you're gonna miss out on opportunities. It's just what it is. You know what I mean? Unless you know how to take that opportunity and say, hey, what can I do to make this work into a deal, right? What can I do? All right, I have a lead. Is this going to be best served for a cash offer, for a wholesale deal, a creative offer, like a subject to or creative finance deal, a novation, a buy and hold, or fix and flip. Like, what is the best option for this particular lead, this particular opportunity? And that's how you need to be looking at things, as you kind of go forward, right? You need to start utilizing multiple exit strategies. If you don't know how to utilize multiple exit strategies, I highly recommend you do that because now you won't be leaving as much money on the table because you'll be able to capitalize on more opportunities. So, and that was what happened in this situation. That's what happened in all innovations that I've done. A cash offer wouldn't have worked in neither of those situations because the sellers wanted more money, right? They wanted more money, but those properties made sense to put it on the market and be able to make money myself because I can do a novation. You know what I'm saying? Versus doing a cash offer, they say no, then I miss out on opportunity, and then a month later I see it listed and sold, and now I could have made money because it was novation. You see what I'm saying? So, um, but that was that deal. It was a good deal. Like I said, I didn't want to hold you guys too long. Look like we're about 45 minutes in, which is perfect timing. But if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in the book. I mean, in the comments, and I can answer those real quick. My boy Nathan Fowles, what's up, Nate? Can I put this up? How can I do this? See, I'm still getting used to this shit right here. What's up, Ty? His question is, what percent of your wholesale deals are creative finance? So I've only done one creative finance deal, which is the house that I live in now. I got this on subject to. So I'm working on getting more opportunities and doing that. I've been presenting it a lot more frequently. I understand how to present it. I understand it, but sometimes it doesn't work all the time because um, maybe the mortgage payments and the rent doesn't line up, right? If the mortgage payments are 2,100 and the rent is 2,000, then that doesn't make sense to take on as like a subject to kind of opportunity. But as many deals as I try, man, I try to create. If the cash offer doesn't work, then my next thing is I'm going to see if they're open to something creative like subject to or seller finance. If that doesn't work, then I'm gonna go novation. And those are like my three, my go-to three right there. That's my top three. Any other questions? Anybody else? Anybody else? What else we got? What else we got? How was this stream? How was it? Was it straight? Was the connection was good? The audio, the video. Give me some feedback on the stream. Did you guys learn anything? I'm trying to see, if this is valuable, if I should continue doing it this way. I know it's only like what 5 or 6 of you guys in here now, so I mean I appreciate you guys taking out the time to kind of listen here. Like the calculator. Yeah, appreciate it, Katie. Calculator straight, man. It makes things a whole lot easier. I don't have to use it on my phone. I just plug in the numbers and boom, it's right there. Do-do-do. But yeah, I think I'm gonna do this a little bit more frequently. I'll do a couple more times and kind of see how it goes. Like I said, if you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be able to chat in the chat box and ask questions and give feedback, etc. Make sure you like the video. So it can be shown to other people. There's a lot of value in this video, I believe. So, the more people who like it, if you like it, the algorithm and all that stuff, it'll get exposed to more people and, it can help a lot more people. But all right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, then that's all I had. I hope this was valuable to you guys. I hope it was helpful. Just did like a quick breakdown on this deal. I think like I said, I believe I'm gonna start doing this with all my deals, just because every deal has a story. All the deals have their own story. Um, not not two deals are the same. They're all are different. But this is kind of how this one went down, and I hope you guys learn from it. But until next time, if you missed the majority of it, make sure you just check back in. It's going to be posted on the channel as well. So if you missed any parts of it, just feel free to look back on it again. But you guys have a happy new year. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next video.